Mensuri Gakusei. Thank you for tuning into Mizuchi Dojo Radio, a weekly podcast featuring discussions between the best martial artists in Western New York on a variety of martial arts concepts. I'm your host, Bill Reynolds, and joining me today are these panelists. We have Bill Nichols, trained since 2013, first GUP in ITF Taekwondo. Jake Rosler, training since 2005, fourth degree black belt in ITF Taekwondo. Rob Guida, training since 2010, owner-operator of MSD Kempo Karate since 2012, second-degree black belt in Kempo Karate, and Chris Davison's trained since January 2014, fourth-degree black belt in ITF Taekwondo. Gentlemen, thank you for coming onto the panel for this, our second episode of our third season, a part two, after the very exciting episode from last week, weapons training, practicality versus reality, where when we're not going to get back into our thoughts necessarily too much on that, this idea that weapons could be seen as having limited application, some supplemental use and for, I guess, your regular open-handed training, and perhaps could just be fun. Or can it be just for fun? And I guess that's what part two is all about, which is the morality of weapons training. We originally did a coin toss a little bit back, so we're gonna start, I guess, with Jake Hajime.
Yeah. I was kind of talking about this with Billy last night. I don't really know what morality goes into weapons training. I mean, aside from, hey, don't hit people in real life with your weapons, I don't know. I guess I don't fully understand the question, so I don't know how to respond to it. So can you elaborate, Renchi?
Okay, sure. So their morality refers to a system of values, principles of conduct, usually referring to between people, and how you should treat them. And when we get to morality within the martial arts, we're almost specifically talking about causing injury or death to others in our own self-defense, or I guess doing performance art or competition. But usually I just think about it in terms of self-defense. So weapons comes into this as mentioned last week, in that weapons up the ante with regard to the possibility of putting somebody in a position where they're going to die. Um, and so the idea that you are training somebody to use if you would, a tool, but really a weapon, that there's some responsibility to teach them safety with it, possibly some other things too. We talked about this on a episode in, I think, season two. What responsibility do you have either as an instructor or as a student to learn how to apply advanced first aid, how to treat injuries that are caused by the weapons you train in? Um, I don't know, that again, that's fair game for this episode. I know that Rob and I think Bill both brought up last time the idea of guns, whether you're being trained on how to use a gun for defense, or if you're going to a school where they're training you how to defend yourself against a gun with your bare hands. And I've watched some of those techniques where the follow-up, after you somehow manage to get the gun out of their hands, is that you then put the weapon on them and or fire. I don't know. Or I've also seen techniques where people are shown how to defend themselves with their bare hands against someone with a knife. They gain control of the knife, and then they end their technique by cutting the person's throat. Um, you know, the, uh, so I think there's a question of morality in that. Should you be instructing people that this is how you end your technique? It was interesting to me when I was looking at some Kenjutsu stuff. They were talking about how their forms typically end with the a strike to the opponent's hand. So obviously not ending with a lethal blow, but a game ender. That's the end of the fight if you like chop off their fingers or part of their hand. So clearly there's some thought in there about, like, what are these weapons capable of, and how should we train in how to use them. So that's sort of what I think, I guess when I think about morality and weapons training, that's what comes to mind for me. But certainly everyone on the panel is free to like say how it does, or I guess maybe if you so choose, how it doesn't have anything to do with weapons training.
Okay, thank you. Rob, I see you have your hand up, so I think we should go to you next, but so
You're
I can
gonna
finish my
you're gonna
my
like
opening thought.
cede your time to Rob. That's fine. Go ahead,
No,
Rob.
no, I'm still going.
Okay,
So
so maybe I can help. So okay, I got two things that kind of like maybe frame the discussion. So, I'm walking down the street and here comes Jake and he wants to take my lunch money. So Jake pulls out, a Rambo knife. Okay, great. So Jake's the bad guy. Super simple. Jake's the bad guy. I'm the good guy. Jake pulls out a Rambo knife.
Sounds about right.
I'm super. What's that?
I just said sounds about right when you said Jake was the bad guy.
Yep, true to
Yeah,
life.
Jake's the bad guy. I'm the good guy. So I'm super cool. So I disarm Jake. I kick him in the groin, just what Kempo does, and I have the knife. Now I have the knife. Now Jake doesn't have the knife anymore. I have the knife. Now who's the bad guy? And
Jake.
and I think when you think about it, when you look at it, anybody walking out the situation, anybody looking at it, anybody coming in, anybody's going to say, "I'm the bad guy. I have the knife." And if you start training people to take that knife and kill them, slash their throats, do whatever you're going to do. The other part of this is they will revert to the training that you taught them. I mean, like I've been in a training circle with knives, practice knives, where I disarmed the first dude and I slashed the throats of every single person that was in the training circle after that. And I didn't do that because that's what Kempo taught me. I did that because that's what the Army taught me. And when we were done, they were all dead. And I walked away saying I did what I was trained to do. But that's not the right thing. That's not the moral thing. My life is no longer in danger once I disarm somebody. So I think we should be really careful when we train weapon arts that if we're training killing strikes, if people are going to do that, like they're gonna do it because that's what we train them to do. That's what they're practicing. And if they do it, they're gonna have to live with that fact that they killed somebody when they could have just disarmed and walked away, or disarmed and ran away, or disarmed and left the scene and de-escalated. And it's really easy to say that's what the plan is, but if you don't train it that way, then that's not what they're gonna do.
All right. Other opening thoughts?
can I go back to my opening thoughts? Since
Okay, the
since somebody stole my time,
time is
Oh,
returned back to you, Jake. Go
You
ahead.
conceded it.
those
I did
Kemple
not see
guys
it,
are just so bully.
right? So I appreciate the input, guys. That really they gave me a lot of thoughts. So thank you for adding on. Um, I want to take we Rob touched on this more, but I do want to take a little bit of a slightly different approach first and go to the instructor side of things. In that, yes, if you're training your students to kill somebody, that's a whole thing in and of itself. But I want to specifically reference a conversation I had with one of our assistant instructors after a kids class the one day. We were doing class. She was helping out. She was applying her adult view of martial arts and giving that directly to the kids. So I pulled her aside after class and I said, "Hey, ma'am, like I appreciate what you're doing. However, while we are teaching them to kill each other, which is hyperbole, obviously, while we are teaching them to kill each other, they're still children. We have to maintain their innocence." So, one, I think especially with more impressionable minds, whether that is actual children, teenagers, honestly, even young adults, because your brain doesn't stop developing until you're like 25 or something. It's we really have to be careful with how we present things to our students. Um, I don't know from a legal standpoint, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge or anything. I don't know from a legal standpoint if, one of my students kills somebody because of a drill we went over, if I should be held legally responsible. I'm not going to get into that. But we
signed
do
the
have.
waiver.
That's not
Yeah.
how that works.
I
But
think that there's a historical case, like in the mid 20th century, where a teacher was held responsible for their student
right,
killing somebody. But
I'm not a lawyer.
I don't know
That's
about anything recent.
yeah, that's beyond what I'm going to get into. The other aspect of weapons
But
morality that I think
Jake,
we have to.
wait, if you could get back to the for a second, because I'm a little bit confused. Are you saying that the instructor was teaching them how to use the potentially lethal weapon, and then you would not have them know about the possible risks of using such a weapon? I'm not sure. Or are you
No,
saying that she was just saying this? She was just like scaring
it,
children.
specifically, we were doing open hand stuff, not weapon stuff.
Oh,
But it was, oh, this is a knee break. And it's like, okay, but they're 7. You don't need to teach them that's a knee break. It's just a kick. Like you have to frame things appropriately for the student you're working with.
sure, I get that, but we're talking about weapons here. So, like now we're training
Right.
children with
So it's
weapons, and should
extra
we
important
tell
for
them about that?
weapons.
I mean,
Yes, and we do have to make sure we reinforce to them, especially you cannot go and hit people with weapons. Right? We already had the conversation, oh, don't punch your friends, don't punch your siblings, don't punch kids on the playground. We have to extra reinforce that with weapons. But we outside of, hey, it's a lot easier to hurt somebody really badly with a weapon. I don't think we have to get into the specifics of it with kids. But the other part of weapons training morality I think we have as instructors is we need to be realistic with our students. And I want to be clear, I'm not poo-pooing on anybody who teaches weapons defenses. I know that is a big part of certain arts. I know there are instructors in the area that do that. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm not poo-pooing what they do. However, I think we need to be realistic with, okay, this person pulled a gun on me. Realistically, what am I doing? Right? Am I going to defend that? Probably not. That you can. There's moves for it. Rob said it on the last episode. I mean, there's drills for it, but we need to. One of the things that we talked about when we were doing knife training at Pride, Max Patterson explicitly pointed out is like, look, I wouldn't do any of these. Like these are really just like absolute last resort knife defenses. This really isn't practical. You're not going to use this that often, but it's good to know it in case you absolutely have to. And I think we do need to present the reality of weapons defenses rather than just making people believe, oh, I learned how to defend myself against a gun or a knife. Now I'm an action movie star. I'm a god. I'll be fine in any situation. So that's where I want to start with morality, and I'll turn it over to other people now.
Okay. Kaiju Customs.
Yes, sir. So I'm of a mind that as far as defending myself, I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. So as far as morality, if I have the means to defend myself in any capacity, but especially with a weapon, if someone's coming at me, I'm going to use whatever force multiplier I have to preserve my life and the lives of my loved ones. So I think it is completely moral to address the incoming force with equal force. So if someone's coming at me and they've got a knife and I've got a knife and I'm like, this dude's going to kill me, then we're having a knife fight. That's I'm not going to let him kill me with that knife. I'm going to address whatever he's bringing with a comparable level of force.
Well, that is morality. I mean, you're actually applying the rules of conduct. You're saying that you're matching their lethal intent with lethal response,
right.
and
I'm
so
saying that is moral.
that's the morality versus I think what people would describe as immoral would be doing lethal
immoral would be
against non-lethal, like sort of
somebody
like Rob
comes
was
at me
getting
with a
at.
knife. I take the knife and then I kill him when I could have just walked away, And if this individual, if I take the knife and this individual still attacks me, he's probably getting stabbed. but I'm not going to pursue him if I've taken, whatever weapon he had.
Right. And
At
again,
that
though, this
point,
is and
I have the advantage.
right, but I think that again, this is the issue of morality, is that should you have some sort of guideline like this where you say, if I'm facing somebody with a weapon, I can respond however I need to, and if a part of that leads to them being killed, so be it. But if I'm not being addressed by a lethal threat, I do not have the same, I guess, weapons-free type of
Right.
attitude that I can do anything it takes at that point.
Absolutely. If a homeless person comes up to me on the street and has his hand out and maybe touches me, that doesn't give me the right to crack his head. That's immoral. That is, against
You're
God.
not going to hit him with a spinning hook kick?
Maybe if you've got the video going, just so we have some good video. But no, in general, no, I'm not going to take out my nunchucks and beat the homeless person.
Taekwondo, man.
So, I believe addressing a lethal threat with lethal defense is completely moral. Now, it gets in the gray area where if you have the upper hand, you don't go ahead and do to them what they were going to do to you unless you're still defending yourself. So it's a gray area, and I'm trying not to throw a legal view on this. I'm just talking about if it's me or him, it's going to be him.
Yeah, we're not talking about legalities at all here, I don't think. But I think there was an interesting point that, I think Robert added a very important layer to this, which is, and certainly like I'm guilty of this. I talk about, scenarios and the response from my student with how it starts. And I think Robert added a nice new layer, which is that, okay, well, it could start with a lethal attack, and therefore you are weapons free to lethal respond. But what if in the course of that encounter, you disable your attacker, you defang them, take away their weapon? Now they are not no longer a lethal threat. Can you continue with a lethal response?
Well,
And something that I brought up too as a part of the morality of this is that you know, if and once the encounter is over and the assailant is neutralized, they are no longer a threat, but they are in the process of dying. And do we teach our students, do we talk about the idea of any responsibility at that point to try to stabilize the person or get them first responder help or anything like that? Because, as we already know, likely in your encounter, even if you were yelling your head off, people would just be recording it on their phone. No one's calling 911. It's sort of your responsibility or is it your responsibility? I would say it is from a moral standpoint, especially with weapons training or weapons defense, because it seems like we added that wrinkle in here as well.
I'd like to continue because you brought up what Rob had said, and I believe what Rob was referring to was if you're at war and you disarm someone, you're not going to let them walk away to pick up another weapon and come back and visit you. There's a difference between being at war or being trained for war and being trained to defend yourself on the street. Well, Rob had said, I took the knife and then I cut the throats of everybody around me. Okay, if you're at war, sure. If you're
that was a different point, Chris, where it's kind of like that's how I trained. That's what we did, right?
Right. As a ranger, you were a ranger.
Right, but I'm saying like that point was like if we train people that way, like in our technique, just your normal knife technique. If you train your normal knife technique every single day, we're gonna do this, take the knife away, then we're gonna cut them, then we're gonna stab them in the throat. Then they're gonna do that because that's how they trained it. You know what I mean? And so that was a different part of the morality. The other part, I agree with you. Like once you take the knife away, then it's
right. And I don't know.
I
I guess, Chris, I'm sure if that's, I don't want to put words in to Rob's mouth, but I will say that
don't do that.
for the idea that the we're saying that, oh well, when it comes to war and training for war it's one thing. Well, okay, well, let's just take that as for granted. We're talking here specifically about training civilians here in our homes, hometowns, with weapons and or how to I guess, take control of weapons and then use the weapons against our attackers. I don't think we're gonna like say, oh well, if they're in war, this is gonna be okay. As Rob is saying, well, they're not gonna be, well, hopefully not gonna be in war. They're gonna be responding on the streets of Clarence or who knows what.
You
Clarence and
mean the
Rough
streets
Town.
of Clarence?
Yeah,
Billy, you're on mute.
Yeah.
you gotta
I
watch
know
Clarence.
my wife was talking to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
Billy, you still have to go, so no rush. But whenever
Yeah, I
you're
mean,
set.
There's a rush.
I don't, there is a rush. There is a time frame here, yes. However, though, gentlemen, I don't have a lot to add to what is going back and forth in that. But when it comes to training and choosing schools, and a lot has been talked about on the kids side of things here, I do have two kids that train with that. So, I pay attention to not only in this case, I train there too, and so does my wife. But with that in mind, I do pay attention to what the instructors are telling those my kids and others in that regard. For instance, our head instructor, one of the big things that he reminds people when we do talk about self-defense or are doing self-defense drills is the drill goes through to what you are trained from start to finish, and that's fine. But also he reminds the kids, especially the kids, not as much as the adults, but the kids that if at any point in that drill, if you are using some of that or using some of your training, but you have gotten to the point where you have disarmed or have neutralized that threat in some way, that is a point in time in which the physicality of it can stop, right? And you can either walk away, run
Yeah.
away, or whatever it is. I do also want to say, though, if you do physically injure somebody in a confrontation, in New York State, you are actually legally obligated to call a first responder. You don't have to act yourself directly for it, but you do legally have to show some sort of effort to get that individual help, whether it be call 911 or whatever that might be. Beyond that, though it is hard to assess that because I think one of the things we're also talking about here is okay, you have removed the weapon, but just because you've removed the weapon doesn't mean you remove the threat too, right? The individual could still come at you open-handed, and at that point, but also I need to keep that weapon. Let's say it is a knife, I was able to get away from it. Likelihood you took damage in doing so, I very rarely would think that you could manage that without any.
Oh, you're getting cut.
Yeah. But with that in mind, you can't just throw away the weapon because now it becomes back into play with that. So now you have to decide if that person comes at you more, if that is something that you're going to use against them or not. It's hard for me to believe that if myself or my family was threatened, that I wouldn't do so if that was the case and took to neutralize that. But I think also just taking the weapon isn't always enough. If they were aggressive enough to attack me with a weapon, they're probably willing to do it without said weapon as well, to it. But it's a twofold thing. When it comes to training, though, if I enrolled my sons in training and that instructor is talking about utilizing weapons in an aggressive manner in which you are the quote bad guy, then my kids wouldn't be at that school any longer. That would be the last day. More than likely, I would actually pull them from that lesson.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I was thinking too is, and in addition to the perspective of the student and how they're going to use the skills they're taught, and the morality thereof, I also think about as an instructor, what am I teaching? So I think a lot of Rob's points sort of get at this concept, which is, am I showing them almost exclusively the technique with the gaining of the knife is you cutting their throat. It always just ends that way, or you definitely stab them. And I think instructors should be considering there's a morality to that because you're programming into these people automatic responses, and so I think that I personally feel like that when if you're going to teach weapons use, or defense against weapons, since that's another concept in here, that you have to really be thoughtful about what exactly automatic responses are you teaching these people. Um, so I think because like I said, I talked to somebody and I don't know what school they were going to, but they were saying, oh yeah, no, we always ended by like leaning down and cutting their throat. After it was over, like they clearly took the
Had to be a
person
Kemper
down to the
school.
ground and then they cut their throats, and I was like going, I don't know if that just seems
Well,
immoral to me.
Yeah.
so and in a lot of cases, that's the drill, right? We drill to finish the drill. That's the finishing maneuver. But realistically, I think anybody that teaches that sort of defense is also telling you as soon as you can get away, get away.
I know, but you do what you train. That's what you do, and that's the
Well,
whole
in
point
the
of
drill.
repetitive
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
People are not going to like go flip on having a thought switch going on while they're engaging in a routine that they practiced a bunch of times
Yeah.
over. What's the point of drilling people at all? The
Well,
idea is that you will bypass their brain and go to muscle memory only so they can respond without thinking. And if your drill is always and then cut their throat, they're just going to do it without even a thought. They're not going to go,
I mean,
oh, now I should
if
think about something.
somebody's reacting without even thinking about, and their reaction is to kill someone,
No, but if
I,
you train your student that way,
If you
that's what
right?
train
you're
But
that
there's a
training
way,
to
difference
do.
between training to kick someone and training to kill someone.
Right. But if you train people in weapons, you have to realize you're not training them to kick somebody. Unless you're wearing a
I
knife on your boot, you're not killing anybody with a kick. But if you're training them
right,
how to
but
use a
that's my
knife on
point.
somebody,
I don't know
they're
about
gonna
that.
kill them. If they're not gonna kill them outright, they're gonna seriously injure them. That they'll need hospital care. So I mean, I don't know how you can. That's
I,
where I think the morality of weapons training comes in, is that you have to be aware that if you're teaching people automatic actions, drilling them with some sort of like coup de grace type of thing, uh, that's what they're
Okay,
gonna do.
and
but we're
and
not. Go ahead.
while I agree, and I'll keep it short, Chris. While I agree, you do what you train. There's a big difference. I personally believe that the overwhelming majority of people, I'm talking 90 plus percent, probably even higher than that, would still hesitate before killing somebody, unlike defending against a punch or defending against a takedown. And maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but that's my stance on
I
human morality.
I think that if you train somebody that, oh, if you ever get a hold of a knife, this is what you do, and this is all you show them how to do, like stab them, cut their throat, whatever it is, then that's all they know to do. I agree with you that if a person is like standing and looking at somebody, I don't know, eyeing up a bus, and they think, should I push them in front of this bus? Most people are going to go, I'm not going to kill this person. But as you guys already brought up a couple different times, if somebody's attacking me, my family, and I have a knife now, and they were trying to kill me just a few moments ago, I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to be judged by 12, etc. I think that's how a lot of people are going to think, especially if they're trained. Oh, I know how to handle a person with a knife, and this is what you do. And it's not to say that if you don't, you could also in your knife training teach people how to just disable people. Cut different tendons, what have you. Not go for lethal points. Show them where things that don't outright murder somebody, like don't cut the inner thigh, don't cut this part, cut these parts or do these things. This will discourage people but won't kill them. Then they can do that stuff. But if you only show them, okay, and then after this and then cut the throat, they're just gonna do it. They're not gonna stop because that was the drill. They stab, stab, slice, and done. I've watched people do those drills, by the way, and they do them very fast and smoothly. I don't see them. There's not a moment where they go, oh, and do I cut their throat right now? No, it's just like do 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 in there, and they walk away.
So I think
We
there's a difference between watching a demonstration of, okay, that's a smooth move,
Oh,
and yeah, you
absolutely.
cut the guy's throat. Whereas I would like to think, as martial artists, somewhat advanced martial artists, we we more than just train muscle memory. We train ourselves to think under duress, and part of that is, as soon as I can get away, I'm getting away. Now, if I've got the knife and he's got the knife, I'm gonna walk away alive.
Right. And again, though,
What happens happens.
I think that there is a talk about this, but again, think about yourself when you've been in a sparring match. How often is it that you get a long period of time to think, am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? You're thinking
In
still,
my age category,
he's,
I have several seconds.
you're thinking he's still a threat. Nobody's called timeout. I'm still in this fight. You're not stopping to think, what's the morality here? So if a guy like has been trying to kill me and he's still standing, I'm not going, hmm, now that I've got this knife and he doesn't have a knife, but he's still looking aggressive and he's going to fight me. How should I handle this? I mean, we would hope that's the case. But to be very clear, I was watching somebody do something who was a student who was showing me a drill that they had been taught. And they did
Mhm.
it very, very smoothly, very effectively, in a practiced manner. I'm not talking about a black belt. And I think that's the concern here is that, as instructors, almost everybody here, black belt, but I'm sure, Billy, you're involved in training too, that, you have to, I think, understand your head when you're showing people how to use a weapon and that can definitely do stuff. You're training them to do certain moves, and if you're only training them, or you repetitively train them, and this is how you kill with this tool, that's what you need to at least have responsibility for that, and if not have that conversation where like let's not do this if we don't have to. But I would say also giving them other options when you drill them, like not all like and then here's where you've cut their throat and it's over. There could be other versions where they don't have to do that. Otherwise, I mean, what's the point? I don't know how training works otherwise. Like you can train people to just stop. Like you got the knife and now the defense is over. You're supposed to stand there and now just hold the knife towards them and you don't continue on through, take them
That's
down and stab them
that's
up.
kind of what I do. I mean, in a sense, it's what I do. Once you get the knife, get rid of it, and then defend yourself.
That's what I do too. It's like once you've got the knife, you back away from them and give them the space to like decide is
Right.
this continuing or not. That's
Right.
how all the drills end.
Yeah. I tell them to get rid of it because if it's in their hands, they're going to use it, and
I
that's
tell them to
another
keep
problem.
With
it, but
getting
that either here or there. But
I mean,
something like that.
it's still. I don't want to end with teaching people how to kill somebody.
Well,
You know.
Get rid
one
of
we
it,
do
now
also
it's
sometimes do is
live.
I'll have my students put it on the ground and they'll step on it and they'll just keep their foot so they keep track of the weapon. They don't have it in their hands, so they first can't like run into them and then they oh my gosh, it's a West Side Story type of a moment. But so I sort of hear what you're saying. I don't teach them that routinely, but I have shown them as an
Yeah.
option, especially with the idea that the cops are on the way. Sort of like you were saying, you do not want the cops showing up and you're the one with the knife in your hand. That's just not going to be good.
No.
Um,
Billy
And
had
I
a
will say, I will say in all honesty, like when you are in combat, and I think I'm the only one in the panel that's been there. When you are there, you don't think about anything. All you're doing is reacting to what happened, what you've trained to do, and that's it. There's no thought. There's no morality. There's nothing. You just do what you've been trained to do. And so if we do end with a knife slash every single time, what they're going to do is slash the throat every single time. They're going to do what they're trained to do. That's what every single person is going to do. Doesn't matter your rank. It doesn't matter who you are. They're only going to do what they're trained to do, and that's it. And so there is no time to think. And that's why it's really going to be really careful as instructors that if we're teaching weapon defense, that we incorporate something other than and now you stomp on the throat and cut it.
I mean,
yeah.
I agree with all of that, what you're saying. The one thing I don't agree with is when you say get rid of the knife. I could see stepping on it or neutralizing it in a way or not wanting to hold it. But if
Yeah, it's
depending on how
controversial.
you get rid of it becomes live
Yeah,
again as a possibility as a threat
it's
to you.
It's controversial, and I understand that. The reasons why I do that is because, like, I understand the tracking of the knife and stepping on it. All that's good and well and good. They can get it back if it's right there. If you get rid of it, like literally get rid of it, it's no longer in play. It's no longer in play. If you keep it, you're going to use it, and if you use it, you're likely to kill somebody that's unarmed. And so when you have to weigh all those different things that could happen, throwing it and getting rid of it is the least risky in my mind.
All right, gentlemen, this was a great discussion. Thank you all for your thoughts. It looks like we'll probably have to have a part 3 at some point in time.
Yeah, we need to follow up on this.
But with
We
that,
need like an hour and a half.
I'm going to have to say, Yame. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, listeners, for your attention. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, and you can share them to our threads, Mizuchi_dojo, or you can email us at mizuchi.dojo.hanbu@gmail.com. You can also use contact information available in our show notes for our individual panelists. Also, please consider supporting this podcast by subscribing by our Patreon for $1 a month. You'll not only help keep this podcast on the air, but you'll also can vote on what topics are going to be in the next episode, and higher contributors can have the feedback right on air, and higher contributors can have a regular shout out to the martial arts school of their choice. You can find more information in our show notes as well as our Patreon page, Mata Yasai.
Only 4 patrons to get longer episodes, guys. Only 4. That's all we need.